welcome to my YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to be reviewing my 25 books to read in 2025 and seeing how we did. So at the start of 2025, I put together a list of books that I really wanted to get read this year, calling it my 25 books to read in 2025. And it looks like we got most of them done. I'm pretty impressed. I think I strayed a lot from it in the last like 3-ish months, but we ended up getting one of the books on our TBR for this month. So we are kind of back on track. So I figured we would just kind of do an overall review, and I'll put up a picture with like the actual numbers of it all instead of just like rattling off facts to you guys. We ended up having 6 books overall that we did not get to in the 25 books to read in 2025. So 6 were unread, but the other 19 did get read and finished. None of them were DNFs. So of the 6 books we did not get to read, the first 3 are mysteries and the other 3 are fantasies. We had no romances or literary fiction left at the end. So I decided we would go over those ones first and then go into what we did actually read, the kind of numbers of that, and all of that kind of fun stuff. So the mysteries that we did not get read in the 25 books to read in 2025 were How to Murder Your Employer. This one is by Rupert Holmes, and I really knew nothing about it. I just thought that it sounded interesting and sounded fun. I gave a copy to my coworker so we could buddy read it, and we ended up never getting around to it. So I figured I might as well get it read since I have it on my shelf, but we just didn't, which is okay. The next mystery that we didn't get to is Stephen King, Billy Summers. I feel like it blew up on BookTube a couple of years ago. I know Sarah Caroli and Destiny Sidwell, like they both ended up reading this and really liking it, and like that inspired me to pick it up and try it. But it's a beefy boy. It's really thick, and I've never read Stephen King before. So I feel like when people start reading Stephen King, they don't typically start with this one. All I really knew about it is that it follows like an assassin who's trying to retire, and I thought that sounded really interesting, but obviously not interesting enough to get it read this year. And then our last one kind of falls more in this subgenre of classics, but I know that it does have that kind of mystery thriller-y kind of tinge on it, very similar to like In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. That one's technically literary fiction with a thriller kind of twist. I think this one kind of falls into that as well, but more with classics. So The Picture of Dorian Gray, this one we did not get read, but I do have the really pretty cool like Barnes special edition. So I will not be unhauling this. I will contemplate unhauling the other 2 mysteries that we didn't get to, but this one I don't think I want to unhaul just because it's such a pretty copy. And then as far as fantasies goes, like I said, we had 3 that we didn't read. The first one that we didn't get to is Reign of Rose. This is the 3rd book in the Dawn of Onyx trilogy. I was really excited reading Dawn of Onyx and really enjoyed it, but I didn't love the trajectory that the 2nd book ended up taking, and it kind of made me lose interest in this series. So I decided to go ahead and throw this book on my priority TBR, thinking like, oh, that'll really inspire me to get it read. And then it ended up kind of doing the opposite, making me want to read it less. I was supposed to pick this like a physical copy up earlier this year. I literally bought this like last month as part of my like start of my birthday haul. So I'm like, that's pretty bad that it took me that long just to get like a physical copy to read. So like I might still end up getting to it before the year's over, and I do really want to finish another series this year, but I just don't know if this is going to be it. I just don't think this trilogy is for me, unfortunately. So some of the books I didn't decide to pull the copies out of my shelves just because they're in an awkward place. And one of those books is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I know that this one follows a like magical carnival circus type situation. And while that does sound really interesting to me, I just didn't feel compelled to read it at all this year. I mean, I have the entire trilogy, and I also have the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, so I would eventually really like to get around to both of those trilogies. I'm just waiting for like the right mood to hit, and I think that a like whimsical like series like that just didn't feel like it fit during most of the year. I do think that Caraval would have been a winter read, if anything, and it just didn't end up making it on the December TBR. So maybe in January that'll be our time for Caraval, but 2025 was just not the year for that book. And then the last book that we didn't get to in our priority TBR is An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. This one is the start of a fantasy quartet. I think there's 4 books in this series, but it's also part of a bigger universe. So I know that there are other books that follow other characters in this series. And I did start buying these as they were getting like reprinted. They have new covers now. And I think that was what really inspired me to put them on the priority TBR, is so that way I could get the like pretty new covers that they're coming out with for them. But I still ended up not picking it up. It ended up not really pulling my interest. It's YA fantasy, and I realized that I might not like that as much as I thought that I did. I think a lot of the YA fantasies I've read this year are either how do I say this? They either have plot points that are like really annoying to me, and like I get frustrated at the characters for those things. There's a couple actually on my priority TBR that I read this year where I was like, oh yeah, I think I'm getting a little bit too old to read this. And then there were others that I feel like just aren't a unique enough premise. This one does seem like a very unique premise, but I'm still not completely sold on it. So we'll see if I end up getting around to this one maybe later this year. So now that we've gone over all of the 6 books that I ended up not finishing of my 25 to read in 2025, we can go over the stats for the other 19 that I did get around to reading. So the most popular genre that I completed was obviously romance, since we had none left. I tried to divide it so that way it was pretty even. Like I tried to do, I think, like 8 mystery thrillers and, like 7 or 8 fantasies. And then I had, 7 romances. So we read all 7 of those romances. We ended up reading 5 of the fantasies and 5 of the mysteries. And then the last 2 books that rounded out our 25 to read in 2025 were actually literary fiction. So we can kind of go over that. But the average rating that I gave all of these books was a 4.25 stars, which I was really surprised by. A lot of the books that I put on my priority TBR for 2025 were books that I'd either had for a really long time, books that really intimidated me, or books I was really scared I wasn't going to like. And so I think that having a mixture of books that I, like was scared to read because I thought I would like them too much, and books that I thought that I wouldn't like anymore, I think I had grown out of them. I think that really helped balance the scales in the favor of being at a 4.25, which I think is a really good number. I think 4.25 is a great rating. So I was glad that it leaned on the higher end of ratings and wasn't, like all of these books were trash. But a couple of these books were actually my lowest rated books of the entire year. So getting into that, the first book that we're going to touch on, I don't have anymore because I've already unhauled it, was The Hunting Wives. That is the lowest rated book that I've read all year. I gave it a 3.25 stars just because of the writing. If you watched my monthly wrap up for the month that I read Hunting Wives, I believe that was October. I think. No, it was probably before September, so probably August. It was like right when the TV show came out, and I was really excited. But like so much of my focus went into trying to pay attention and follow along with the weird trains of thoughts that the main character was taking. Like I just couldn't get behind how she would start on something, and then like there would be like a page break, and then she would start on like a completely like same thought of what she'd started on before, but like the first thought had gotten derailed, and so then she had to like kind of come back to what she was trying to focus on, and I just couldn't focus on that. Like I was just like, her ADHD and my ADHD were not compatible, like at all. Like 2 completely separate systems were happening there. So that's why I rated that one really low. So the next lowest book that I had on my 25 books to read in 2025 ended up being As Good as Dead. This one is the last book in the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy, and I ended up just not connecting with this one as much. I feel like even though we are following Pip, who's a like graduating senior in high school, like I feel like she matured really, really quickly in this book and took like a really dark turn. I think that her mental health had really suffered from the first 2 books in this series, and she hadn't really done the work to course correct that until like the very end, after she already kind of made a mess of a lot of things. And I just was not here for that, because it also felt like she was ruining her own life, like she was self-sabotaging herself, and I just could not get behind that. So I ended up giving this one a 3.5 stars. And then the next book that I rated the lowest in my overall priority TBR ended up being Six of Crows. I know that everyone's a super big fan of that series. I know everyone really loves the Grishaverse. So I decided, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. And while I did enjoy like aspects of the story, I really like some of the characters, I think I just don't like a heist plot line. That was the 3rd heist book I'd read all year. And I just rate all of the heist books that I read 4 stars or lower. So to give this one a 3.75 was not that surprising. I also really struggled to follow along with the book if I wasn't doing the audio, which would have been fine if I had like a regular audiobook available to me, but I could not find the audiobook anywhere. It wasn't on Spotify, it wasn't on Everand, it wasn't on Audible. Like I literally have so many platforms I could have found a book on, and it wasn't on any of those platforms. It literally was only available on like YouTube, and like a girl was actively reading it to us. And like that was how I did the audiobook for it. Like she did great, but she was also like maybe 15. Like she was like a kid. Like, definitely not an audiobook narrator yet. She's getting there probably. I mean, she recorded it like 7 years ago, so she might be a fully fledged audiobook narrator now. But it was not like a legit audiobook. It wasn't actually how it was supposed to be done. I literally was just watching like YouTube videos of it. So that was kind of what I guess made the experience a little negative for me, was that it was just hard to follow along without the audio. And I just couldn't get an audio besides like a random recording on YouTube. So that was not as fun. So those are kind of our, I don't want to call them duds, but like our kind of lower end ones. Everyone else got a 4 stars or higher. Really just pulled them all off the shelves. So we're just going to go in the order that they are on the shelves. Like, I'm not going to try to organize them in another fancy way. I already pulled the ones that were like our lower ones. So we'll just go from here. So the first book we're going to talk about is The Guilt Trip. So this one I ended up giving 4 stars. I think I originally gave it 3.75 as well, but I bumped it up the more I thought about it. My main gripe with The Guilt Trip was that we are following a character who's kind of like on the periphery of a wedding party. And that's like the whole point of this trip, is that they're going to celebrate one of their friends getting married. And so, like, you're meeting these, like, other characters that are involved in the couple that's getting married's lives. And, like, you know, the fiance who's going to be the bride at the wedding, like, she is painted to be, like, a super unlikable character. And I really, really did not like her. And then we kind of have, like, this, like, weird change moment where we're supposed to start, I guess, like, sympathizing with her or liking her more. And I couldn't really get behind that. Like, I got it. I did start to like her better when I could understand her motivations. But I still was not really convinced that she deserved the full redemption arc that she got. And then someone who was not a villain ends up being the big bad. And like that just felt like it came like super out of left field. And so that was part of what I did not love about this. Like I like a little bit of like subtle foreshadowing. And like usually I'm pretty good at like picking up foreshadowing hints, but like there was quite literally nothing in this that like could have pointed me in the direction we ended up going. So I think that was what made it a little bit lower for me. But like I said, the more I sat on it, the more I did decide, okay, wait, this is actually kind of okay. So 4 stars for Guilt Trip. The next book that we're going to touch on that I read in 2025 for my Prairie TBR is Alice Feeney's Daisy Darker. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I actually read this one earlier this year when I was traveling for a friend's wedding. And I think that is a really great time to read a book like this. It's pretty short. It's super fast paced. We're moving through. So the whole premise of Daisy Darker is that her family is getting together to celebrate her grandma's birthday. And while they're together, they get kind of like stormed in, kind of. I guess like the tide always rises at this island where their grandma lives. So the tide comes in, they're not able to like leave. So they're basically stranded and then start getting ticked off a little bit one by one style. So I did like that premise. I thought this one was actually done really, really well. The twist was a little weird for me. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say anything too like deep on it, but the way that this ends, think Cabin Across the Lake by Riley Sager. Think along those lines of like, wait, what the heck? But I did end up enjoying it. I just wish that it wasn't that genre. Like for what it was, I was having a good time. But I just don't typically like that kind of book. So to give it like a full 5 star would have been crazy for me. But I still did enjoy it enough to give it a 4 star. And I do recommend it to people who enjoy that kind of book, because I know that is for some people. A book that we picked up at the like very beginning of the year was Red, White, and Royal Blue. I believe we read this one in February. And I gave this one, I gave this one a 4.5 stars. So in this one, we are following the president's son and the Prince of England. So we're following their romance and how they kind of, you know, start off as like this weird like rivalry of like really disliking each other, thinking the other one is a certain way. And then they kind of come together and realize like, oh, like I had all these preconceived notions about you, but I was really wrong and you're actually like a really great person. So I really enjoyed that. I think that this one is a little overhyped though. Like it really is just like a romance. Like at the end of the day, it's not that crazy. It's not that special. I did really enjoy the characters in it, and I liked the side characters a lot. So I was upset when I watched the movie and realized that they changed some of the side characters. But like overall, it's still a solid romance, and I would recommend it for like pretty new beginners into the romance genre. The next book that I wanted to touch on from my 25 books to read before 2025 is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I actually ended up giving this one 5 stars. I think both of the literary fictions that ended up being on my list changed my mind a lot about literary fiction. I don't know what it is about either of these books. I can't really put my finger on what it is that's so different about them that makes me like them more than a regular literary fiction. But like, I was just really enjoying lit fic this year, I guess, because I also read a couple of the literary fictions that weren't on my Prairie TBR, and that was wild. But in The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, we are following Evelyn Hugo as she recounts her life to a journalist that she like specifically selected to kind of tell her story as her life is kind of coming to an end. And Evelyn Hugo is notorious for having been married, 7 times and having all of these husbands. So she wanted to kind of clear the air and tell her story and get it out there using this one particular journalist, which I thought was really interesting. I thought was really done well. There was a couple of different callbacks to like other like things as she's telling her story. She reveals things like as the story goes. And so it was really nice to get like this kind of older woman's take on these things that have happened in her life. And obviously it's all fictional, but like I still thought that it was done really well. It made Evelyn Hugo feel like a real person. And then, like I said, the other literary fiction that I read this year from my Prairie TBR was Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I ended up giving this one a 4.25 stars. The main reason this wasn't a 5-star like Evelyn Hugo was mainly just because of, like some of the moments where I wanted to throttle the main character. In this one, we are following June, who is an author who is reconnecting with another author that she went to college with named Athena. So Athena's career has really blossomed. She has a really great trajectory. She's got like a Netflix deal. Like Athena's really living the high life, and June is still kind of struggling as an author. Like her career is really plateaued. Her like editor and her agent are like not really happy with anything she's been, giving them lately. So things are really rough for June. But her and Athena are getting to be really good friends, and she goes over to Athena's house. Athena lets her know, hey, I finished a new manuscript. You should check it out sometime. And then Athena ends up choking on a pancake in her own apartment while June is there, just hanging out, chilling with her. And so before, everyone gets all crazy and wild with, news of Athena's passing, June decides to go ahead and just grab that little manuscript that's already typed up and read it over. And then she ends up passing it on as her own work. She makes some tweaks to it, and we kind of go from there. So this one was a really interesting, wild ride, but I did really want to punch our main character like in the face. Like she was super insufferable. I kind of hated her, but I did really like the takes on, the publishing industry. I really liked what the author had to say about, like the cycle of social media, how one day you're the villain, but the next day you're the hero, and like you never really get a say in how people are perceiving you. I did think that was super interesting. And so that was a pretty good read. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. Okay, so the last of the big beefy hardback books is The Hemlock Queen by Hannah Witten. This one is the sequel to The Foxglove King that I read in 2023 when I first got like pretty deep into tracking my reading. I think it was one of the first books that I like actually reviewed on Goodreads, and I absolutely loved that book. So the premise of The Foxglove King is that we are following Lore, who is a necromancer in a like world where necromancy powers are supposed to be forbidden. Like no one's supposed to have them. They're supposed to be dead and gone with this like old ancient queen that had passed away. And so no one's supposed to really have these powers. But she gets caught practicing her necromancy, and the king is like, "Hey, I could like put you in prison. I could punish you, but I would actually rather you get close to my son and see if my son is plotting to like kill me and take me down." There is a like religious sector in their government, and they are kind of like the bodyguards of the royalty. And so she gets a bodyguard who is one of those monk type guys. And so she's trying to balance, like her relationship with him and like uncovering things with him, and how, like they just really like click as people. And like, even though they have these major differences, they're kind of meeting in the middle. And then also, obviously, the prince is the person she's supposed to be getting close with. So it is a little bit of love triangle dynamic, which I do eat up. I didn't love the turn it took in this one. I feel like we were forcing it a little bit. And a good chunk of this book, I would say like a solid 50% from like the 25% mark to the 75% mark, was Lore being like, hey, I think something's wrong. I should tell my friends. And then not telling anybody. Like every other page, she would mention, like, something's wrong with this. Like, this is off. This feels weird. And then she wouldn't do anything about it. And it was just kind of like, okay, girl, like, what do you think would happen? So, like, even though I did really enjoy, like, where we ended up in the end of this book, and I did think it was a really good twist, I was like, girl, like, if you would have said something, we could have prevented, like, a lot of actually, like, bad stuff. Like, some of the stuff that happens at the end of this book, I'm just sort of like, That was really not like good for anybody involved. But it was fully preventable if Laura would have just spoken up. Because, like, in the first book, she makes a bunch of friends. Like, she becomes like an honorary member of high society now. And she still isn't telling all of these people that could help her out. She's not letting any of them know any of it. So that was very interesting. I think I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars solely based on how good the ending was and where I can see the next book going. But I did take off that like half a star just for how obnoxious it was that she wouldn't tell anyone anything, which I also think is a very like YA fantasy thing of her to be like, I'm just going to sit on this and like hope it gets better. And it's like, no, girl, it never does. You need to tell people. So that's where we are with Hemlock Queen. I do hope to pick up Nightshade God in my birthday book haul and like hopefully get to that at the beginning of 2026. I believe it's just a trilogy though. So like that should wrap everything up. So another book that we ended up finishing for our 25 books to read 25 really recently was the Throne of Glass book, the first one in that series. I ended up giving that one 4 stars. I do understand the hype behind it, and I understand how it is the blueprint for modern romantasy, but it also was leaning really YA for me and a little like weird love triangle-y. Like I feel like they were trying to force something there with the guard Dorian, I think was his name. Or no, it's Cole. It's Cole that I was like, why are we trying to like force something here? I personally like Selena with Dorian, but I also know he's not endgame. Like I know that's not actually gonna happen. But I did think it was very interesting how you can pick up like, oh, that happens in this book too. Like that also happens here. Like a ton of Throne of Glass is, like I said, the blueprint. Like literally everything that has been written in the past like decade in the romantasy space is borrowing something from Throne of Glass in one way or another, it feels like. So that was really interesting to see kind of the like origin of that. Another book that I finished for my priority TBR that I didn't pull the physical copy for is People Meet on Vacation. I ended up giving that one a 4.5 stars. So in that one, we're following our characters Poppy and Alex, who became really good friends in college and decided every summer they're going to take like a vacation and do like a holiday together. And they end up stopping doing that for a couple of years. And Poppy's in a rut in her career and in her personal life. And she knows that Alex's brother is getting married. So she reaches out to Alex and she's like, hey, like the last time I was like really happy and thriving was when we were on vacation. We should go on vacation for your brother's wedding. Like we'll just make like a road trip out of it. And so they end up deciding to go ahead and do that. They travel, they get a hotel, they stay at this resort, like all of this stuff. It's kind of like your quintessential like romance. I did enjoy like certain parts of it, but I was not super impressed with Alex. I think that the main gripe I had with that story was the male love interest. I literally told someone that like his main characteristics are lying and being tall. And I was like, that's not doing it for me. So, did not love Alex as the love interest. I do think him and Poppy make sense together and him and Poppy work out together really well. But, like, for me, I would not want Alex. She can keep him. The next one that I have that we need to talk about that I don't have a physical copy for is the Zodiac Academy, The Cursed Fates. I believe that's the 6th book in that series. I ended up giving that one a 4.5 stars. Absolutely loved it, ate it up. I can't really tell you anything since it's so far in the series. Just know that I'm eating those books up like potato chips. Like I still need to pick up the next one. But every time I pick one of those books up, I'm like downing it within like 2 days. Like it's crazy. You'd think 600 pages, that's too many pages. This is going to take you forever. No, I'm gobbling it up. I'm having such a good time. But basically, the premise of Zodiac Academy is that we're following 2 sisters. They're twins named Tori and Darcy, and they have been raised here in like the human mortal world. But they're actually Fae princesses who had to be like brought to our world to keep them safe. And so now that they're like of age, they're supposed to be going to this school called Zodiac Academy to prove that they're, worthy of keeping their parents' title and continuing to rule this kingdom. But while they're at this academy, they run into the 4 heirs, who are the boys who basically their parents took over for the king and queen when they were killed. And so the girls are trying to prove that, like they can make it in this Fae world. They can keep, their crown, they can keep their riches and all this stuff. But they have 4 boys who will eventually inherit the kingdom if they don't step up. So it's kind of an enemies to lovers thing, real enemies to lovers, not just like, he looked at me weird one time. Like, no, like he actually wants her dead. So it was kind of great. I'm, like I said, having a good time. I did not love the very end of this most recent book, I feel like the turn that it took was crazy. And I didn't expect it, but also like, what was I expecting? The big bad of this series is like way worse than any other villain ever. So that was that one. The next book to talk about is Blood Like Magic. I also read this one early in the year and kind of forgot about it. Like, I was so excited to pick up the sequel when I read it, and then I just genuinely forgot to pick up the sequel. I don't even own the sequel yet. But Blood Like Magic, I gave 4 stars. In this one, we're following Voya, and she's a young witch who is kind of doing her calling, which is a task that your ancestors give you to kind of like prove that you're worthy of being a witch. And so in this, Voya is tasked with killing her first love. But the problem is she's never been in love yet. So she doesn't know who she's supposed to kill. Like, she basically has to find a boy that she should kill. And coincidentally, at the same time that she's trying to accomplish this, this main like technology company is also doing testing on like compatibility. And so she decides to go ahead and submit to this study, and she ends up getting the protege of the inventor of this technology. So she starts, like pursuing him, trying to like fall in love with him, trying to have this romantic relationship so that way she can complete her task. But it ends up taking a way darker turn. It ends up being a lot more than just this random guy inventing stuff and, trying to better society. It is a little bit of an urban fantasy, which I did not clock when I was like actively reading it, but I'm pretty sure it's set in like 2050 or something. Like, it's not that far into the future, but it's like the future times, and people are able to like do all of these modifications. Being a witch is not like considered weird in their society. People just have power sometimes, which was kind of fun. But I'm still really excited to eventually pick up the sequel. Another book that I read really recently, just to get off my list, was In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. This one is one of those that is technically literary fiction, but leans a little bit mystery. In this one, we are following Jessica as she attends her college reunion 10 years after graduating, and her little group of friends decide that they're going to go ahead and solve the murder of one of their other friends. So it takes a really like interesting, weird turn. We start getting other people's point of views a little bit over halfway through, which I really enjoyed. I really liked getting to see inside of the minds of, all of the people in this friend group. I did like the twist that it took at the very, very end. There is a twist because Jessica doesn't really understand like what happened that night that her friend died. She doesn't remember it. So she does think there's a possibility that it could have been her who killed her friend. And so I liked the twist at the very end that we get of how Jessica's memories kind of unlock themselves. But I will say that Jessica and all of her friends are the most unlikable characters I've ever read. Like, being in Jessica's point of view actively made me so angry so many times. Like, she has a great life and she's still mad about it. And it's like, girl, like, what are you talking about? So yeah, that was really obnoxious. Another book that we picked up very early in this year, I think we read this in February or March, was By a Thread by Lucy Score. Another like big beefy boy, but like oddly enough, I was really only intimidated by like the size of it and not really anything else. But I ended up reading it relatively quickly. I remember it taking like less than a week, which I was really surprised by because I was just kind of eating it up. I gave this one a 4.25 stars. And this one we're following Allie, who ends up running into Dominic at her job at a pizza restaurant. And he has like an unsatisfactory experience with her. She's a little bit sassy with him. And so he gets her fired. And as like revenge, his mom reaches out to Allie and is like, hey, my son treated you really badly at this restaurant. Please come work for our company instead. And so that's how Allie and Dominic end up being in a little bit of a workplace romance, which I did enjoy. My main gripe with this one was that the characters just acted a lot younger than they were. I think Dominic was like late 30s, early 40s, and he still had like daddy issues. And I was like, I get it, but also like maybe go to therapy. Like, maybe we should have worked on this like a decade ago. And then I did also like Allie, but she also acted really, really young. Like, there were times where I'd be like, girl, that would not fly in like an office setting. But she was still doing it. So I did enjoy this one. I also really like some of the side characters. I can't really remember a ton about the side characters, but I do remember being like, I would follow those people around in a heartbeat. I believe this is the first book that I read on my priority TBR this year, which was The Goal. I strayed a little from my TBR in January, waiting for Onyx Storm to come out, and this one ended up being the first book that I read in it. It is the 4th book in the off-campus series, as this one is Hockey Romance Interconnected Standalones. And this one we're following Tucker as he enters a relationship with one of his roommate's rivals named Sabrina, and they end up having an accidental pregnancy situation and seeing where things go from there. I ended up really liking this one. I like Sabrina a lot. I think, like I said, I gave this 4.25 stars. And I was just really having a good time like hearing their story. I don't love the accidental pregnancy trope, was my only thing. So as soon as that kind of happened, I was like, oh, I'm not really having a good time. But that wasn't introduced till the second half. So it wasn't like we start the book and immediately we're having a baby. Like, no, it was like later in the book, which I appreciated. Mile High is another book that we read from my priority TBR. Gave this one a 4.5 stars, so it is on the higher end of the books that we rated. I did really enjoy this one. In this one, we're following Stevie, who's a flight attendant for a hockey team, and she starts to kind of get weird vibes from Xander's, who is one of the players. He's a little bit mean to her in the beginning, which I didn't love. Like, it was kind of like, girl, like, stay away from that man. Like, this is bad. But he's only like flirting with her, and he just flirts weird. Like, he just wants her attention more than anything else. So he's like, the bad attention is worth it, was kind of like where he was coming from. And so being like a notorious playboy and like, like getting any girl he wants, like the one time a girl wasn't giving him attention, he didn't really know what to do. And it came off as him being really mean. So I do understand why people don't love this book, but I've never seen a like male protagonist in a romance book have as much character development and growth as Xander's does. Like, by the end of the book, he's like a completely different guy. He admits to all these things that he has said and done being really wrong and being really bad, and he completely changes his actions and shows her what he means when he, like is trying to compliment her and like win her back. Like, he's actively putting in the actions to be in her good graces, which I really appreciated. So we did like Mile High. This is the first book in, I believe it's a 4-book series, 4 or 5 books. I can't remember. 5. I literally just had to turn around and count my books. It's 5. So very excited to pick up the other books since I already have them on my shelves. And that book is also getting trad published. So I know that it has a new cover now, but I like the irregular cover. And then the last book to touch on from my priority TBR read pile is The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. I ended up giving this one 5 stars. We're following Olive and Ethan as they go on the honeymoon that Olive's sister should have gone on, but everyone at her wedding got food poisoning. So Olive as the maid of honor and Ethan as the best man are the only two that don't get sick. And because her sister won this honeymoon and like it's non-refundable, she can't get any of the things back, she decides like, okay, yeah, I'll just go. So that's how we end up being the Unhoneymooners. And I really enjoyed this one. It's another like dislike to love storyline where they start out really hating each other, not liking each other, not getting along. But as they're in this forced proximity situation, they kind of have to see the other side and see where they're coming from. And so I really enjoyed this one. Okay, so I think that kind of wraps everything up for our 25 books to read in 2025, which is kind of wild. I feel like that was also way more books than I thought it would be. Like 25 books doesn't sound like a lot. That's basically like 2.5 months of reading for me, but also like spread out throughout the entire year. That was kind of a lot of books. So I'm very excited to kind of be done with my 25 books to read in 2025. I do technically have one that I haven't read that I didn't talk about in this video from Lukov with Love. It's on my December TBR, and when putting it into my calculations, I did just act like I'd read it and gave it a 4. If that's correct, I'll keep it and it'll be fine. If that's incorrect, I'll put up a little graphic that says, the actual numbers, if it, raises it or decreases it. But most Mariana Zapata books, I give a 4 or 4.5. So I'm not going to be too surprised if From Lukov with Love ends up being the exact same. So that kind of wraps up this video. I did want to let you guys know that I'm going to be changing how I'm doing my videos moving forward. So we're going to have 1 more video this month. We usually do 2 a month, but we're going to be doing 4 a month moving forward. So we're going to be doing our January TBR video the very last week of December, that last Wednesday, since the month ends on a Wednesday. And then we're going to be doing our December wrap up the next week and doing that into 2 different videos. And that's how we're going to make it, stretch into 4 videos. So instead of having these like hour-long yap sessions, it's just going to be like a quick, happy 30-minute-ish wrap up thing, and then hopefully less than 30 minutes for my picking my TBR, because I think that part always goes a little bit faster. So just wanted to let you guys know about that change. Make sure you're aware. Let's pick an emoji to put under this. We did like a Christmas tree last video because it's December. What other? Do a snowman. The little snowman. He's super cute. Do the snowman emoji. Even though it's not really winter yet, at least where I am, it's just getting dark at 4 p.m. It's not really acting like winter besides that. But the snowman emoji sounds very fitting. So go ahead and leave that down below, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye. Okay. Oh, are we not recording anymore? What are we doing, girl? Okay. We're gonna try that again. Actually, we're not. We're just gonna record from here. Oh, okay. What are we doing? But I know that it does have. Oh, that wasn't even the last one. The other one I don't have. Oh, that's right. A lot of the books that I put on my priority TV. Oops, I like hit my plastic thing. If you read, she kind of unveils. Did I say Athena or did I say June? I'm going to start from the beginning. So we're following Lore, and she gets a bodyguard from the kind of like holy. They're like man nuns, I guess. I don't really know how to describe them. I guess they're like monks, like literally. In this one, we're following, what is her name? Voya. I liked getting to see inside the minds of, I'm going to sneeze.